1995. We're in the backyard in Idaho, and the purpose of this tape is to have Dad tell us as much information about him as we can. And so we're going to start out with you telling us when you were born, where you were born, and take it from there. Okay? And I'll ask you questions if we need to.
I was born in Dripping Springs, Texas, just a few miles out of Austin. February 28, 1922. I had 3 brothers and 1 sister.
And were you born at home or were you born in a hospital?
I was born at home.
Home.
What was a hospital?
Somehow I knew he was going to say that.
And you want their names?
Sure. Tell me their names and their ages. Or their names. Their names will do.
The oldest brother was Olin Jerome.
Uncle OJ.
Born
Yep,
1913.
Uncle OJ.
Next was Lonnie Fred. He was born 1915.
And he died?
Then came my sister, Ruby Lou, born in 1917. Then my brother Clyde, Walter Clyde, 1920. Then I came along in 1922.
So you were the baby.
I'm the baby.
And what a sweet baby
And what
it
a
is.
baby. And I'm still baby.
That's true. That's
By
true.
my wife, yes. And I still drink my coffee.
Yeah. Okay, where did you go to grade school?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I started grade school in Sierra Blanca, Texas. Then from there to Fabens, Texas. And I went to school there for a while. Then I finished grade school in Socorro, Texas, which is just east of El Paso. Then I went to high school in Clint, Texas, and graduated in 1941.
And then you went into the Marines after
and then
that?
from there, I went into the Marine Corps.
And you were in there for how long? 4 years or?
Well, it was parts of 4 years. I went in 42 and got out in 45. But I wasn't in all of 42, and I wasn't in all of 45.
And
I was discharged, what they call COG, convenience of the government. When the war was over, they had no more use for us. And of course, I joined up for the duration of the war. I didn't sign up for 4 years or 3 years or
so just however long.
only what they call convenience of the government.
Were you married when you went in the service?
No, I was not married when I went in the service. I went in the service and from Phoenix, Arizona is where I was sworn in. And from there I went to San Diego,
Camp
California.
Pendleton.
Camp Pendleton?
Camp Pendleton. Marine Corps base, actually.
Right.
Damn.
And then when I graduated from there, out of boot camp, they took all of us that graduated from boot camp that day and took us to what they called Aliso Canyon, which was just out of Oceanside, California. and started what they called the 1st Corps Medium Tank Battalion. They'd never had any medium tanks because they thought they were too heavy for the islands. But they decided to try it with us. So we were what they called a bastard outfit. We had our own quartermaster, had our own paymaster, we had our own. Was one battalion that was the same as a division. I mean, we had the same thing that a division has. Our own paymasters and so forth, quartermasters. So we trained with our old Sherman tanks. They had, well, some of them had 5 Cadillac engines
Wow.
in them, and some had 5 Chrysler engines in them. And of course, that was right at the time when the Zoot Suiters were having a heyday in Los Angeles.
What are Zoot Suiters?
And when we first got to Aliso Canyon, there was not a thing in the world there except arroyos and no buildings, no nothing, just the hills and we had to build our own camp. So our colonel, we had the youngest colonel in the Marine Corps. And he told us that when we got our camp all built and so forth, that we could all go to LA, Liberty. But about that time, the Zoot Suiters got started in LA and so forth, and they barred all servicemen from LA.
What are Zoot Suiters?
Well, that was the Pachucos, Mexicans with the long chains from their, go almost to their knees and so forth, and they'd stand and twirl them around. They call them the Zoot Suiters.
That style has quite come back too. A lot of the kids now are wearing those chains that go almost down to the knee
Yeah.
and kind of hook back up on
And
the belt.
baggy pants.
Baggy pants.
And so forth.
How interesting.
And they called them the Zoot Suiters.
Huh.
So anyway,
Did you know what that was?
they barred all the servicemen from going to LA on Liberty on account of they was having so much trouble with them. There's knifing people and shooting people and so forth and so on, and they's taking over the streets of Los Angeles. So anyway, when we got our camp built, our colonel told us, he says, now boys, I promised you that when you got the camp built, I'd let you go on the Liberty to LA. But he says, as you know, that's restricted. And everybody went, And old colonel, he was a good old boy. He was young, and everybody liked him, and he knew everybody by their first name, and called them by their first name, and or at least by name. A lot of us was called by our last name, but he knew them all, and they. You probably have to make some more coffee. But anyway, everybody was all disheartened. But he says, I'm a man of my word. He says, you know, no one can be in LA in a uniform except MPs. So he says, you're all MPs. Go get your MP bands and your 45s and go on to LA. Well, we did. And I think that was in the papers and so forth, but we rounded up the Zoot Suiters and we had over 1,000 of them. They took them down to the jail. Told them if they didn't know how to handle them, we did. So they didn't have any more trouble in L.A. for a while.
And how many people were in your division or your battalion?
Well, there were 5 companies.
Oh, wow.
And I've even forgotten how many people we did have in a company.
I was just wondering if you collected 1,000 of them. I mean,
Oh yeah, well they
just
was
rounded them up.
one end of L.A. to the other. And well, they didn't have enough places to keep all their switchblade knives and guns and so forth. They had chains they used for battling, but they found out. Well, of course, I guess the officers, police department, and so forth, I guess they were kind of restricted by what they could do and what they couldn't do. Where we didn't.
There was no real restriction on you.
There's no restriction on us. We did whatever was big enough to do. and of course, then we were young.
Were the police pleased by? Were the police glad that you did that?
They seemed to be. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
That was I believe, in the first part of 43. Must have been.
Wow.
Because I think, no, I can't remember exactly when we got out of boot camp, but it was toward the end of the year. So I think it must have been in 43 that we went to L.A. So I guess that must have been the year that they was having all the problems there. There. Okay. From there, I guess we went back to the camp. We trained at Aliso Canyon. And I can't remember what date we set sail, but we put all of our outfit on an old Liberty ship that they'd gotten out of mothballs called the Robert G. Harper. And we were, I believe it was 33 days aboard ship. We lost an engine. We had 2 engines, and we lost one of them. Of course, top speed was 12 knots.
And how many miles an hour is that?
I don't know.
Me either.
I don't know the difference between knots and
miles per hour. Yeah.
But it wasn't very fast. And then when we lost one engine, we were slower than that. And then we pulled into
No good, Mom.
Suva, Fiji, in the Fiji Islands, to get the engine repaired. Then they claimed there was a Japanese submarine following us in. Of course, we didn't see it or even hear about it until it was all over. So that didn't bother us. So from the Fiji Islands, we went back out and landed in Noumea, New Caledonia. And that's where we set up camp, did a lot of training there. got back aboard the ship. And we were aboard ship over 30 days again. I have to backtrack it, I guess, to see exactly when we left there, because we hit Guam on July 21st of 44, and we sailed around Saipan and Tinian when they hit those in reserve to see if they needed us or not, and they didn't. So then we hit Guam right after that, on the 21st day of July. I remember that. And, of course, we'd sailed around quite a few of the islands before we hit Guam. It was on Guadalcanal,
Picking up his phone.
Bougainville, but dates have gotten away from me. I can't remember what dates we landed on each one of the islands. But because I'm sure that's where I came down with dengue fever and malaria fever, was on Guam right after that campaign. And they flew me back to Hawaii and then back into San Francisco. And I know I'd been on all the other islands before that, so I can't remember when we left one island and hit another island. Got back to, I don't even remember when we got back in San Francisco. They flew me from Hawaii to San Francisco on the China Clipper. I remember that. Into the hospital there in San Francisco, and then they finally transferred me over to Klamath Falls, Oregon.
And they flew you someplace, didn't you? You said?
Yeah, they flew me from Hawaii to San Francisco in the China Clipper. Seaplane.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And, well, they flew me from Frisco to Klamath Falls, Oregon also. I was in the hospital there for,
And that's where you saw your first amaryllis plant that you sent to your mom. Klamath Falls.
I don't think he heard you.
I don't think so.
Oh.
Where'd you tell me you saw that first amaryllis that you sent Mama?
Well, I saw it,
I thought he said Klamath Falls before when he was
well,
telling
it
me.
might have been. I can't recall now.
I thought that's what you told me.
Well,
Maybe.
if it was, I guess that's what it was then.
Because he gave me my first one too. And that's when he told me that story.
But anyway, we got to Klamath Falls after I got where I could get around out of the hospital and all on my own. I went to work for that mill, sawmill.
Where?
Well, they got mills all over the place. They had one there.
Are you talking about Klamath Falls, Dad?
Yeah, that's where that mill was. But they had a lot of them scattered all over the states.
Like Louisiana Pacific or
No. Yeah,
Georgia Pacific?
No.
Nordic?
No. Warehouser.
Warehouser, okay.
Warehouser.
Yeah, they are all over.
I went to work at Warehouser there. And they had in each pay envelope and on the bulletin board they had big signs up. Cut over timberland, 50 cents an acre. However many you wanted, and however much you wanted, and they'd take it a little bit out of each paycheck. I says, huh, I'm single and I'm from Texas, what I won't buy land in Oregon for.
Even if it is only 50 cents an acre, huh?
Yeah, 50 cents an acre.
Bet you wish you'd have bought it now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I say.
Hindsight's always great.
If your foresight was anywhere near as good as your hindsight,
And you'd be all set.
you'd be real
You'd
well
be a
off.
rich man.
But, yeah.
Well, I kind of wanted to hear that story that you told us about the cooks, the fat cook and the skinny cook, and those
The
incidences.
fat cook and the skinny baker.
Yeah, that's it. Tell us about that. That was a
on
cool
Guam.
story.
Yeah, that was on Guam.
Uh-huh.
And of course, when all organized resistance ceases, that's when they say the island is secure.
Right.
But actually, that's when the dangerous part starts. Anyway, in our camp, and they had dug foxholes, and our cook, we called him Tiny, and he weighed about 300 pounds. He's so large around that two guys couldn't reach around him and touch arms. He's like some big, giant redwood tree. But he's always jolly. Big, fat man. And he was the mess sergeant. And we had a little, tall, skinny man that was a baker in our outfit.
You're gonna make that wet.
We're going on the table.
And anyway, they were sleeping in the same foxhole. And during the night, a Jap came up and just emptied his rifle into that foxhole. And the next morning, we found out that the big fat mess sergeant didn't get a scratch on him, and the little skinny baker was just riddled from one end to the other.
With holes, bullet holes.
Yeah, bullet holes.
Jeez.
And the big fat sergeant didn't get a scratch. Now, how they could miss
Somebody that
the big fat man and put all those bullets on the little skinny one, no one could ever figure out.
The other story that I liked that you told me about was was it a corporal? It was one of the guys that you said went to school for a very short time and gave you and another guy a hard time when you were
Oh,
cooks.
that was 90-day wonder.
That's it. I couldn't remember.
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant, that's it.
Yeah, he went to officer school.
Oh, like Uncle Tom.
That's
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
And then came out a shaved tail, a 90-day wonder. They go to school for 90 days and come out and they think they know everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, we got all of our cooks killed in the first wave when we went into Guam. And of course, like I said earlier about our young colonel, and he was we had him all the way through, and
They said seedless. Lied.
he when we went in on Guam, I was up ahead of the front lines, directing fire from our tanks and all. And anyway, on the walkie-talkie, I got called back. And all I could think of was directing fire on their own troops. I knew I didn't, but that's all I could figure why I'd be getting called back for. And I got back, and the colonel asked me, he says, can you make some coffee? And I said, sure, I can make some coffee. So I made a GI can full of coffee. Started to go back up, and he says, no, wait. He says, can you fix something to eat? And I says, well, I can open some cans, but I'm not a cook.
You just
So he
became
said,
a
okay. He says, you can have all the help you need. Just, call them. Well, when we were building camp there in Oceanside, right out of Oceanside on Aliso Canyon, I got tired of reporting to Sergeant so-and-so, and he'd send me Sergeant so-and-so, and, well, I've got all I need to go report to Sergeant so-and-so and spend all day going from one sergeant to another and not doing anything. Well, I got tired of that, so I asked them if they'd put me on mess duty. And they grabbed onto that real fast.
And why did you want to do that? So you knew that you would be in one place all the time?
I'd have something to do. Instead of running around from one sergeant to another, and everybody had all the men they needed. So I went on mess duty for 45 days.
Yeah, this is
So we got our camp built, and we was using those old diesel pump-up stoves.
Who's talking?
Well, when we got over there, and I thought, the cooks hadn't come in yet.
Because it moves my...
So I thought,
I cut it on the ground.
the cooks hadn't pulled up, hadn't come in on Guam yet, so nobody else knew how to light them old pump-up diesel stoves. So I pumped it up, fired it off, and made a pot of coffee, GI can full, and then he wanted to know if I could fix something for him to eat. And I said, well, I can open up cans, but I'm not a cook. And he says, okay, open up cans, whatever. Ask for all the help you need. And I said, okay. So I did that, and I got ready to go back up where I belong, and he called me back, and he says, no. And I said, well, they need me up there. He says, I need you here. And I said, well, I made your coffee and fixed your meal. The cooks will be in shortly. I got to get back up where I belong. And he says, no, you're going to stay here. So I stayed there. And every time I'd do something, then I'd take off again, and he'd call me back. And finally I says, well, aren't the cooks gonna be in shortly? And he says, Beach, we don't have any cooks left. They came in on the first wave and got a mortar shell and killed every one of them. We don't have any cooks. And I said, well, Colonel, I'm not a cook. And he says, you're the next thing to it. He says, you're the only one that we've got that even knows how to light one of these stoves. I went, okay. So he borrowed some cooks from other outfits. And one big old long, tall Texan, about 6'3" or 4, called Isaac Procise. Yep. So we finally put up a fly after we got the island secured. Had to put up some boards across there. He and I would do the cooking and then set all the pots out. The ladles, you know, and the guys come through and you just ladle this and ladle that and ladle the other and so forth. And we had one officer by the name of Clark, 90-day wonder, that we started talking about. And he would come in right when you're the busiest, and all the other officers would bring their mess kits and go right through the line just like all the men. You know, they come through the line, but Clark, he'd come inside, lift the lid off a pot, and look at it and smell of it, and then say, "Whoa, what's this?" Well, you'd have to stop what you're doing and look around at him and see what pot he was into to tell him what it was. And he constantly do that. And Procise looked at me and he says, "Let's fix his clock." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Let's tell him from now on he can come through the line like the other officers. We don't have time to mess with him." Okay. So we told him. Very next meal, here he was back in there lifting the lids off the pots again. "Well, what's in this? And what's in that?" Old Procise, he looked at me and he says, "Okay, next time he pulls that, let's throw him out." And I said, "Sure."
What rank was he?
He was lieutenant.
Lieutenant.
And adios.
Yeah.
Going to work. So, very next meal, he was in there lifting the lids again, asking what this is and that and the other. Procise looked at me and nodded his head, and I nodded my head back at him. I thought he was joking. And he said, "Okay, let's do it." So he went over and grabbed him by one shoulder. I grabbed him by the other shoulder and seated the pants, and we threw him over the boards. He ran us up to the colonel.
That's a funny visual. That's a very funny visual.
I thought Procise was joking all the time. You know, you don't do things like that to an officer.
Surprise, surprise.
Oh boy.
So, anyway, he ran us up to the colonel. We told the colonel what had happened. If we asked him nice, you know, that he could come in and look and check and smell all he wanted, don't bother us while he's doing it. There's only two of us to do all of it. And anyway, he told the lieutenant, you know, don't bother these boys. You know, they got all they can handle. And then, of course, he chewed us out while the lieutenant was there for
Throwing him out.
mistreating an officer. Yeah,
This is gonna pick you. This will pick you guys up, Mom. It's a real sensitive microphone. Okay, Dad.
he got his head in the center. You won't be able to breathe.
Well, now that's not an altogether bad thing.
Hey, she's making fun of you.
I think she's tired of him.
Well, we going home tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, Dad.
Trying to keep up with him.
Anyway,
He was scary yesterday.
We
Mm-hmm. Had him under bed.
stayed out of trouble there for a little while. And then one night, about midnight, corporal of the guard came in the tent where I was sleeping, woke me up, asked where Pro-Size was, and I told him in the bunk right up there. But I said, you best not wake him up. And he says, oh yeah, I gotta get you up. You're going on guard duty. I said, something? I says, he'll hit you with something if you wake him up. He woke him up. Said, we're going on guard duty, and we told him, no, we're not going on guard duty. So here come the officer of the day, Lieutenant Clark. And he says, you refuse to go on guard duty. Yep. Well, he run us up to the colonel. We refuse to go on guard duty. Colonel says, that right? That's right. You can't put the cooks on guard duty. That's one thing they don't do. Oh, that's right. That's right. He says, get out of here. Going back to bed. He told Clark, he says, don't bother those boys. So we got out of that one okay. Then after the island was secured and so forth, and we got a galley built. We were cooking and Clark came back in and started lifting lids off our pots again. Pro-Size looked at him and says, you know what happened to you the last time you did that? He says, yes, I do. He said, well, it's fixing to happen again. He says, I don't think so. He says, you was told, you know, not to bother us anymore. And he says, I happen to be the officer of the day. The mess officer. Uh-oh, we're in trouble again. So he says, where's your menu? Hanging right there on the wall. Oh, you're gonna have salmon patties. Yes, sir. Okay. You ever bone any salmon? No, sir. Well, you're going to. Yes, sir.
This is canned salmon you're supposed to bone?
Yeah. So we told him, well, you better get us a lot more help. Says, what messmen we have won't be able to get it boned in time for lunch. Oh no, they're not going to. You're going to.
Probably very true, though.
Where were we?
Let's turn it off a second.
So he said we were refusing to take orders, so he ran us up to the colonel again. He told the colonel that we refused to take his order. The colonel asked us. We told him we didn't refuse. We told him we'd do it, but we couldn't do it in time for lunch. And I told the colonel that I had never heard of such a thing as boning the salmon. Never had. And the lieutenant said yes, it needed to be boned. So the colonel says, well, now how am I going to determine this? I said, well, call the doctor. The doctor came in, the colonel asked him if canned salmon needed the bones removed from it before eating. The doctor says I don't know who said that, but whoever it was needed to see a psychiatrist. So the colonel dismissed the lieutenant, told him to leave those two boys alone, regardless of what they did or what they didn't do from now on. He didn't want to see them back in his office. So we got out a bone and salmon. I don't remember what happened after that. But we didn't have any more trouble with Lieutenant Clark. From there, I think I already told you about the big fat mess sergeant.
Yeah, you did.
So,
Oh, I know what you told me about before. You told me about the big, the tanks and how you guys were on the ship and you were firing or something was happening, or you were told to fire on somebody, and you guys told him that you couldn't, or I don't remember exactly, but something like that.
well, I know that that was the first medium-sized tank which we had there that the Japanese had ever seen. And with the light tanks, they used to stick their rifle in the bogey wheel and stop the tank. Or put a hand grenade on it and blow an opening in it. Well, they tried that with these big Sherman tanks, and it just ground their rifles up like splinters. And they'd hold a hand grenade against it and let it go off, and all it'd do is blow their hand off. It wouldn't even break the paint on the tank. And of course we had flamethrowers on them. And on those light tanks, all they had was about 3 squirts, and they were out of fluid. So the Japanese found all that out. So they'd wait until we hit it 3 times, and then they'd charge by the hundreds and hundreds, and then we'd just sit down on it. We had 2 55-gallon steel barrels welded together full of fluid. And then hundreds and hundreds of them would attack the tank. And we just sat down on the flamethrower then and just like mowing grass. And of course we had the blades on the tanks because some of those hills and cliffs were so steep you couldn't get the tanks up. They had the power, they'd pull up and then pull themselves right over backwards. So we had the blades on them, and we'd cut notches out of the hillside as we went up. And then of course after using the flamethrower, we dig a trench with the blades, and then just push the dead bodies in the trench and cover it up. Because they bloated in no time at all, you know, so we had to keep them covered up, keep disease down.
Your hand just went.
We get a picture of her.
Yep.
Need a picture of my hand.
And then there was one incident there that when we finally put tents up, and there was a 4-man tent. And of course, that was after the island supposedly was secured. And I woke up with a cold sweat. Of course, we had mosquito nets over our cots. The rifle was laying in the forks of the cot, and then the mosquito net was tucked in on all 4 sides. And I woke up in a cold sweat one night. The edge of a tent was pulled up. What it was supposed to be wasn't that way when I went to sleep. And there was a Japanese with a tent up, with hand grenades, so forth and so on, and there I was inside my mosquito net with no weapon available. And I knew if I took time to start getting my mosquito net down, it would be too late. And I was laying with a hand on each edge of the cot. So I just flipped myself over into the middle of the tent, hit the pole, and the tent came down. Somebody got him as he went through the camp.
So he ran out.
Yeah, he left when I flipped over and hit the center pole. Then I got chewed out by the other 3 guys that was asleep. I disturbed their sleep. But somebody got him before he got out of camp. Or otherwise the guys wouldn't have believed me. Oh, we had little funny incidents like that happened.
Wasn't there an incident where you guys were on a Navy ship or something that you told me about?
Oh yeah.
You tell me about.
That was going over, and we was in that old Liberty ship.
You got him.
Did it get?
Yeah.
And I don't know why it is, but when the Marines are aboard ship, the Marines have to handle the guns. I don't know what the Navy does when they don't have Marines hauling around. I don't know who handles it. But they had 20 millimeters aboard ship there, and we had never seen a 20 millimeter gun before. But that was our job to handle those in case of a air raid or whatever, you know. Well, we had our tanks aboard ship, and we had 75 millimeters on them. And when they gave the order to man your positions, it was a trial run. It wasn't actual. That when we ran to our tanks, there was probably, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 of them aboard on the top part of the ship. And they had them all pointing the same direction. They were giving orders over the loudspeaker. You know, this was just a trial run. It wasn't anyway, they hollered, you know, man your gun. So we headed for our tanks. And the guys went to the 20 millimeters that was appointed to them. And the rest of us went to our tanks. They said commence firing, so we started firing those 75s all at one time. And at the recoil those things have, and 30 or however many we had up there, all pointing in the same direction to recoil back. As I say, that old ship only had a 12 knot speed, high speed, and we took that thing backwards with all those tanks recoiling at the same time in the same direction, and it backed that ship up. Boy, did we get chewed out for that. I said, well, they ought to have had sense enough not to tell us to fire. So we would obey orders. But, you know, I often wondered how the Navy, who handled the guns on board ship when they didn't have Marine people aboard that they're taken somewhere. And never figure it out. And leave them 20 millimeters up to us, and we never saw a 20 millimeter before. But they'd taken that old ship out of mothballs. It was an old Liberty ship that, Robert G. Harper.
Was he the captain?
Huh?
Was he the captain of the ship? Oh,
That was the name
that
of
was
the
the name
ship.
of the ship. Oh.
That was the name of the ship, Robert G. Harper.
Huh.
And of course, so we had quite a saying about old Eleanor Roosevelt. She was over there practically all the time, one place or another. And she got mad at us. So she came there to Guam, and we were down the ocean swimming. There's not supposed to be any women around.
Oh.
And she said that we were uncivilized, that all the Marines should be sent to etiquette school for 3 or 4 years before returning to the United States. They didn't know how to act around human beings. We told, well, you know, we could have had the war over a long time ago if we hadn't had to look twice to see whether Eleanor was between us and the Japs who we were shooting. The only human being I know that could eat an apple through a picket fence without using their hands.
Oh, dear.
I liked her husband, but I didn't care for her. Yeah, she gave a big party for the servicemen. All back east. All the blondes, white women, nothing but colored servicemen. That's all she invited.
Why?
I guess to show she wasn't prejudiced. I don't know what else.
That's really kind of...
There was not a white soldier, or sailor, or Marine there.
And you guys, you just were not invited to this party?
No, we wasn't even around anywhere.
Oh.
But we wouldn't have been invited anyway. She only invited colored service people. So she wasn't our favorite woman. Our favorite woman, I guess, was Tokyo Rose. We'd get her on the shortwave radio, which we wasn't supposed to. But,
Was she a singer?
oh, she was a storyteller, she was a singer, she was a whatever. She was on the Japanese side. She's a white woman, American. And she was telling us how we was over there in the Pacific loving up to a coconut tree instead of being back in the States with the beautiful women and so forth, you know. We were over there making war against people that shouldn't have war against them, and we got a kick out of it.
And after you, at the end of the war, you said that I don't even know if it was at the end, you became ill. In that period of time, when did you become ill with malaria and
Dengue fever?
dengue fever?
Broke out with dengue first because we was taking Atterburn to keep from coming down with malaria. It's not to keep you from taking malaria, but keep you from breaking down with it. But I broke down with dengue fever, and then while I was down with that, well, then the malaria broke out too.
And does dengue fever make you feel or have the same symptoms as malaria, or what is dengue
Well, I
fever?
don't know, you just run a high fever.
And how did you get that? Was that mosquitoes too?
Well, that's
No.
just an island disease, I guess.
Oh, I
don't
see.
know. But that was getting right close to the end of the. That was around the end of 44, and the end of the war was early 45. But yeah, I came back. That's when they flew me back. They flew me back from Guam. And I've got a picture of the nurse that came back with me. I saw it in a photograph book the other day.
Oh, good.
I can't remember what her name was.
So she took care of you when you were being sent back?
Yeah. And I got so bad that they set the plane down in Hawaii instead of the States. And she got off the plane with me and stayed there. She wasn't supposed to. But she got off the plane with me there in Hawaii and stayed with me in the hospital till I got well enough. They put me on another plane there finally and flew me into Frisco, and she went on into Frisco with me. So I don't know how much trouble she got in, but I'm sure that she got into trouble because she was supposed to, just go into Frisco and right back. But when they took me off, she got off. And then from Hawaii to San Francisco, they flew me on the China Clipper. And there was a general on the plane going back to the States. And when we got to Frisco, we landed in the bay, in the water. It was a seaplane. And of course, when we taxied up to the dock, got out, and that general, he made a big speech. Of course, he didn't know me from Adam, but I was one of the heroes, back, and you see what kind of shape he's in, and so forth. Oh, Lord, big little batch of malarkey. Offered all kinds of booze and cigars and all that kind of stuff.
Women?
Yeah. Then after we got to in the hospital, and then after we got where we could get up and around a little bit, I had been writing to a girl who got my name and address from some veterans outfit, you know, service personnel. They wanted to write a serviceman. Anyway, we had corresponded for a while. When I got there, they said, well, I'll call her. And I called her, and they insisted on us coming down. We got down pretty close, and got in the bar, had a few drinks. They wasn't going to serve my buddy because he wasn't 21 years old. I said, yeah, you go serve him. I said, he's old enough to go over there and fight and get shot. He's old enough to have a beer. We got our beer.
Well, that's pretty good rationale.
Huh?
I said, that's pretty good rationale. If you can go over there and put your life on the line.
Yeah. And of course, he'd been wounded too. And, you know, you get, I guess, I don't know exactly how to word it. You get bitter or
Maybe you,
hardened or
yeah.
something, because, you know, you could be standing talking to someone and you wait for him to answer, and you look over and he's flat on his back. He's been shot, you know, and he's gone. He's not there anymore. And you see so much of that that you just, I guess you kind of get hardened, and then when you come back and people say, you can't do this or you can't do that because he's not old enough, it kind of turns you inside out. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, he's going to do it. Anyway, we called them again and told them we wouldn't be there. And they says, where are you? I says, I don't know, we're on a bar in, what was it, Market Street or somewhere, where the
In San Francisco, right?
streetcar runs.
Oh, huh.
Powell Street, I think it was. I don't know. And anyway, I said, no, we stopped there and we got to drinking and we're not in shape to come and meet anyone. And the mother, the one that answered the phone, said, well, you just stay right where you are and we'll be up there in a minute. In a little bit. And sure enough, they came in. Came right to us. And says, you are Carl Beach, aren't you? I said, yeah, that's me. And I told them who the other boy was. Well, come on over to the house. They lived on 225 Jersey Street. So we went over, stayed for a few hours, went back to the hospital. In fact, I've got pictures of her in there. Gave her a 25 Luger pistol that I brought back with me.
And once you were in the hospital, you didn't go back overseas, right?
No.
Were you discharged at that time?
Yes. Yeah, when they released me from the hospital there in Klamath Falls, of course San Francisco shipped me to Klamath Falls to that hospital, and I went there, and after I was able to get up and about, I went to work for Weyerhaeuser sawmill.
How long did you work there?
Oh, several months until they was going to release me from the hospital in the convalescent camp or whatever they called it. And they asked me if I had a preference to be shipped to. And, well, I got a lot of relatives in Georgia and so forth, so somewhere in Georgia. And they said, okay, fine. We'll ship you to St. Simon Island, Georgia. How's that sound? I said, that sounds fine. Here. So I had a little 37 Willis that, of course, from the hospital there in Klamath Falls, they gave me a 30-day leave. So I went back to Clint, El Paso, and old Fred Chambers knew where he could get this little Willis, and he was a mechanic, and he says, I'll make sure it's mechanically sound. So I bought it, and he fixed it up, and I drove it back when my 30 days was up. Well, in fact, I took my mother up, and then old Jay was up close there, and we went by to see him. I think at that time he was in Redding, California. And anyway, I went back to the hospital there, and when they got ready to ship me out, and they gave me 120 hours to get to St. Simon Island. And I said, I don't know if I can drive that far in that length of time. Because that was, you know, about as far west as you could go. And it was right down on the bottom part of Georgia where it joins Florida.
Oh, that's a long drive.
And that's 5 days and nights. And they said, well, if you can't drive that far, you know, if you can't make it, get rid of your car, we'll put you on a train. I said, no, I'll keep my car. So I drove into El Paso and went out to the ranch. Leo and Ruby decided they'd go through with me. So they took their car, and we drove on. And before I left the hospital, they told me, says, you know where Athens, Georgia is? And I says, yeah. Well, just a few miles out of Athens. I said, okay. Well, that's up in the north part of Georgia. So I got to Atlanta, and I was beat. And it was like Sunday night, and at midnight, you know, that 120 hours is over. So I told Leo and Ruby, I said, well, I'm just going to go up to the provost officer, marshal's office, and turn myself in, because I'm going to be AWL after midnight. So I went up there and told them who I was and where I was from and where I was supposed to be. And they says, well, it's only a few hours, you know, down there. I says, yes, but I've been, midnight would be 120 hours that I've been awake. I can't stay awake anymore. I got to get some sleep. They said, well, we can't do anything. You're not AWL now. I said, no, but I'm going to be. We can't touch you. He says, okay. So we went down and got a hotel room, and I called the camp, St. Simon Island. And I told them who I was and where I was. They says, well, I says, I can't drive any further. I'm beat. And I'm supposed to be in there by midnight tonight. They said, you go get you a hotel room and go to sleep. And when you wake up, then you drive on down here. I says, okay. So we drove down there after I woke up the next morning. And of course MP there at the gate. And I pulled up, told him who I was, where I'm from, and I says, actually I'm AWOL right now. I was supposed to have been in here at midnight last night, but I called and they told me to get a room and come down when I woke up. So here I am. Where's the guardhouse? She said, oh, it's right down there. She's going down to the barracks and they'll take care of you down there. I said, okay. I drove down and went in. Top sergeant talked to me. I told him who I was and where I was from, and so forth. And he says, well, there's you a bunk right there. You can bunk there. I said, okay. He said, I'll go in and get your paperwork done. And I said, all right. So I laid down. It wasn't 30 minutes later, I guess, he came and woke me up. Says, here's your paperwork and your Liberty card. I said, Liberty card? He says, yeah. You mean I can go on Liberty now? He says, sure, you got a Liberty card. You can go on Liberty anytime you want to. I said, well, okay. I said, I figured I'd be in the guardhouse. He says, no. He says, go on Liberty. He said, I would if I had a chance to go. So we went back out on Liberty. And Leo and Ruby and me, and we didn't do much. Anyway, I left them, told them, well, I'm going to go back in, go to bed. So I went in, laid down, went to sleep. Next morning, I woke up, Reveille woke me up. I looked around, and everybody was gone, out of their sacks. You know, I went in to the top sergeant and asked him, I says, how come nobody woke me up? He says, what do you need to be woke up for? I said, well, to make formation. He says, you don't have to make formation. I said, since when? He says, since you got here. And I said, well, I never. He says, go down to the galley and get you something to eat. So I went down. They asked me what I wanted, and they fixed just what I asked for. Man, I got back up, and I says, well, what do you want me to do, Sarge? He says, I don't care what you do. Go on Liberty if you want to. I said, would you please tell me what's happening around here? I said, something ain't right. And he said, what do you mean? You don't like the way we treat you around here? And I said, oh yeah, that's fine. But I can't understand why. You know, he says, well, you can live off the base if you want to. Just tell me where you're living and I'll send you a check to you. I says, what on earth is going on around here? He says, if you don't like the way we treat you here, you can go over the hill. I said, no, I don't want to go over the hill. He says, then do whatever you want to do. I says, will you explain to me why? There's that little hummingbird. He's going on back out the other way now. And he says, now it just started.
It's almost like being on TV.
Figure out exactly where it left off here. Right. We were still talking when he shut me off. And
Yeah,
he says
you
that's
were.
where it ran out.
Okay, did you, when we were, hang on one
sec.
sec. Hang on one second.
Anyway, I was talking to the first sergeant. And I finally got him to tell me exactly why I didn't have any duties there. And he said that that was a naval air station, and the only Marines there were guard duty, and they could not put a cook on guard duty. Therefore, I could do what I wanted to do. So I asked him, well, if I couldn't go and work in the galley, and he says, you go down and talk to that Navy man, and if he wants you in there, it's fine with me, whatever he wants. So I went down and talked to him, and he says, you bet, I'd be glad to put you on watch. So I worked in the galley. Until I got ready for my discharge. But I'd rather have something to do than nothing to do. Of course, everybody was hollering at me, well, they'd sure like to be in my shoes. They'd just go on liberty and stay. I said, well, your money runs out before long. And you need a place to eat and sleep.
That's true.
So that was my duty at the Naval Air Station, St. Simon Island, Georgia.
So when you were discharged from there. Is that right?
Well, I had to go to Jacksonville, Florida to get my discharge, but that's where I was when they just transferred me down there to get my discharge papers.
So did they move you to Florida for discharge, or did you just travel there and then?
No, they drove me down and got my discharge papers, and then came back, and then they paid me so much a mile back to Phoenix, Arizona, where I joined up, and I drove my car back.
And then where did you go after that?
After
you were discharged?
I went back to El Paso, or Fabens, and that's where I lived. Worked for the Rio Electric Service.
You were an electrician, right?
Yeah, wiring houses and gins, and oil mills, so forth and so on. And then from there I went to Standard Oil of Texas, El Paso. And that, I moved to El Paso on Womble Boulevard, bought a lot, put a trailer house on it, and moved to Sunrise Acres on Vulcan Drive, bought an acre and a half, put the trailer on it, we got the house built, then moved in the house, rented the trailer out, and then built a second house for the folks. And we left there in 1955, moved to Wilmington, California, bought a home on Marbella Avenue, and lived there until 69, I think it was, or 68.
Seems like it was 16.
I think we moved from there in 68 because I was living on Rose Street when I bought that new 68 Dodge Charger RT.
Yeah, that's right.
So it must have been 68 when we bought that place in Rose Street in Bellflower. We left there in 72 and went to Sutherland. We bought that place there on the South Side Road. And then left there in 85 and moved up here to Post Falls, Idaho. And went to Coeur d'Alene I believe it was in October. We opened that store.
Wooden things?
Wooden things. We lived in the back of it, in an apartment. And we kept it open 3 years. And Rick wasn't coming out on it. He had too much expense. Because his nephew came up, he and 2 boys, and he was paying their rent and utilities and buying groceries for them. Plus he was paying rent on the
Store?
store. Plus he was paying rent on the shop he was using to build the stuff. And it was just too much. Couldn't make it. So we told him, close it down. Worry about us. We go to California. That's where we was going to go before he talked us into coming up here. And first we told him he wanted us to come up. I told him, well, we'll go down to California. He said he was wanting to open the store. I said, well, we'll go to California, and if you do open the store and you do need me, then let me know and I'll come up. No, he says, I'm going to open it, so you come on up. So we came up, and it didn't work out. 3 years we held it open, but it no more than just broke even. So we told him, don't hold it open on account of us. Because I've always got a place to go.
That's right.
But instead, he talked us into moving here, and he bought this trailer and pulled it in. Like I told him, I don't care where I live as long as I got a place in and out of the weather. So we've been here ever since. Now, is there anything else you want to know about?
I don't know. Is there anything else you...
Huh?
Is there anything else you can think of? Feel like you've kind of gone through most of it.
I think so.
You have any life's lessons or...
Have any what?
Life's lessons, meaning like things that you think that you could teach either us or the grandkids, or any words of wisdom? I mean,
Words
after...
of wisdom.
Yeah.
Believe nothing you hear and only half of what you see.
I've heard that all my life. I believe that. That's good. All right.
That's
so.
been a saying of mine since I can remember.
Well, it probably serves you pretty well, huh? Serves everybody pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. That way you keep a lot of misunderstandings down.
Yeah.
Judge a person by their character.
That's good. It's still going.
I guess the old saying is that you reap what you sow.
So you believe that?
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
Yeah, I think if you sow goodness, you will receive goodness. And if you sow trouble, you'll get trouble.
Mm-hmm.
All these people that, youngsters especially anymore today, the teenagers and the young bucks, they think they can beat the law, but they can't beat the law.
Yeah, they catch you eventually.
But they won't believe what you tell them. It seems like that they have to learn on their own. You can tell them the mistakes you made when you were young growing up, to not do this and not do that, because you do get in trouble. But it goes in one ear and out the other, it seems like, and they do the same thing. And then you can tell them, well, now, I told you, if you did so-and-so, this is going to happen. And you wouldn't believe me, you have to find out for yourself.
That seems like a lot of waste of time, doesn't it? It's too bad we can't just
accept that and then not make those mistakes, but it doesn't seem like that's human nature.
No, I think it is more. Now, I'm not saying this to be prejudiced or anything about it, but to me, the way I see it, the Jewish people are more learned by talking and telling than of making the same mistakes themselves. They're more of a learned
People.
group of people than any other race that I know of. If like they help one another, so I understand, but they only help them one time. They'll set them up in business, tell them how to operate, and if they don't do it, they don't help them the next time. Now that's my understanding,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm no authority on it. But that's the way it seems to be. I've gone to school with some of them, and they seem to be that way. At that time, I guess they still are. I don't know.
Probably.
But they are more of a clannish group than any of the other races that I know of. So I think we learn a lot from them.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, most of the people that you hear talk, they dislike them because they claim they have all the money.
They're probably envious, maybe.
Yes, I think so. I guess that's neither here nor there.
Other than it's nice if you can learn from other people's mistakes.
Right. But son usually believes father, daughter believes mother, and you don't hear of them getting into nearly so much trouble and all as you do about the other races of people. So it must be from teachings. You're going to get sick if you're down there.
Well, do you think your butt's kind of molded to that chair? We've had you in the chair so long.
Yeah, you get to thinking back, and it brings back memories. I know the guys laughed at me, or I laughed at them, or whatever you want to call it, from the time I joined the Marine Corps. Everywhere we went, I seemed to know a female somewhere in the area. So we left there. San Diego, I knew people. And when we went overseas, we went to New Caledonia to train with the tanks. And the boys laughed at me and says, we finally got somewhere you don't know anybody, didn't we? I said, well, you get me a Jeep and we'll go see somebody. Yeah, I know we will. I said, yeah, I will. So we had to stop along the way to find out. Of course, like they say, I'm getting Alzheimer's disease. I can't remember. But at It's all right. I can hide my own Easter eggs too. You know. But anyway, he went down to the motor shop and got a Jeep. He says, "Now where to?" And I said, "You don't think I know anybody here, do you?" He said, "No, I don't." I said, "Okay, let's find the second valley of the fur." We stopped, asked. They told us how to get to the second valley of the fur. Went there, went along. I saw the name Lecca on the mailbox, and I said, "Right here." Look. He said, "Yeah, I bet you know these people." I said, "Yeah, I know." They were French people. And went up and knocked on the door, and the old man came to the door. I said, "Jeannie Lecca live here?" He said, "Yeah, who are you?" I said, "I'm Carl Beach." He said, "I don't know you." I says, "No." I reached in my billfold and pulled out a picture of Axie Hollyfield. But I says, "You know her?" "Oh, Axie." I says, "Yeah, Axie. Yeah, come on in, come in, come in." We went in, he went down the cellar and got out his good bottle of wine, poured us some, talked to Jeannie Lecca, Second Valley of the Fur, new man, New Caledonia. The old boy shook his head and he said, "If we went to China, you'd know somebody, wouldn't you?" I said, "Well, I might." And then, of course, when we got to Guam, most of the people there spoke Spanish. Well, at that time, I spoke Spanish fluently. So I had no trouble there meeting people and so forth. They just shake their head. Couldn't believe it. All the way from San Diego to New Man, New Caledonia. Knew somewhere where we stopped. But I was writing to Axie Hollyfield, North Carolina, at the time that I went to service, just pen pals. And she had sent pictures of herself. And her brother had met these people. He had been on New Mayo, New Caledonia. And he had met them and wrote and told her about them and so forth and so on. And she had sent them pictures of herself and so forth. And then when I pulled her picture out of my wallet and showed it to him, "Yeah, you come right on in." Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Which of your jobs did you like the best? Not in the service, but jobs that you had after you were discharged. Did you have a job that you liked the best, or did you just have the jobs to get money to feed all of us?
Well,
a lot of
I usually had 2 jobs at a time
Right.
for nearly 25 years. And I don't know, I guess I like the refinery work. It was interesting. Get exciting once in a while when you had a fire. And the funny thing about, we made aviation gasoline, we made diesel fuel, we made, regular gasoline, ethyl gasoline, kerosene, and the most dangerous was kerosene. Start more fires on the kerosene tanks than any other. Don't ask me why.
And what was your job there? What did you do?
Oh, I did everything. Start at one end and work all the way through it. Now, in Standard Oil, I just worked in sales department. Well, the tank loading, shipping. We'd load the tank cars with all the different products, even the old black tar-looking fuel oil, we called it. not diesel fuel, but the real heavy stuff. What's left when you take everything else out? Old black tar looking stuff that they used to run the old trains with. And that was straight days, so I worked for a guy that was drilling 36-inch water wells for the government. I worked Standard Oil 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and weekends off. So they had me working 7 days drilling oil wells, water wells. And then they found out I wasn't working Saturday and Sunday for Standard Oil, and they wanted me to work double shifts on Saturday and Sunday at the well. No, enough's enough.
You used to, I know you had a window washing business.
Oh, I
That
started
was one
in
of those.
California.
And that
yeah.
was really successful, wasn't it? I mean, you
Oh,
had a
yeah.
lot of clients.
It gets so big, couldn't take care of it.
Yeah.
So then I'd sell it and start in another area and start another one. Till it got so big you couldn't take care of it. I gave one to Uncle Leo Mathis, Leo and Sylvia. And I gave one to old Jay. Iced your leg. Everything would jerk out of her hand and be out after that course again. Oh, terrible. See, we warned her before.
Yeah, because the
When they, is this testing again?
Just one final check once they put the log in, yeah.
You and I can get it in the wheelbarrow, can't we? I do.
Well, maybe we don't need it over
Yeah,
there.
we do. It'll look nice. I'll go get the wheelbarrow. Take 2 seconds.
I just know you got this stump here, which he's not getting, but
Okay, we'll put the log in.
is that gonna look all right in there?
Otherwise-
Okay, the light's
Or do we
on.
need it back further?
Well, he can't see through that thing.
Oh,
No, but
You
he
gotta
can-
wait till you
Oh,
check
he's
it
got to
out.
go check
But
it.
he can look and I think we
You
need
get
to
it
push
done?
it back
You need to push it back a little bit further.
Okay.
so it kind of blends in. With
Are we going to make the big part
What?
go to the back?
What's
Wait
that?
a second.
Make the big part go to the back?
What you need?
No, we just need it back.
What does Granny need?
We need to come with that money box.
Okay, is that it? Go back and look, Charlie. You may not be able to get the whole thing in if it's this far over, is what I was thinking. Is that okay? What do you want to do?
You know where we...
So well, tell me so I can help you. That root's in the way. All right. You're going to go all the way to the back?
See? Yeah.
Is that what you're doing?
They'll put a stump on you and you'll stay there forever.
Let's see.
And then they couldn't freeze dry you.
Yeah, it would freeze
How's
dry
that
you.
look, Ryan?
Let's go check.
Except I think we need it.
We can't get it too far over because we've got dead center. It's not like one of these very maneuverable items.
It's heavy.
How about if we, let's turn it up this way and then move it again. What are we doing? We're gonna put this part over there?
No, because that's like...
Interesting. You think it is? No. But I will maybe
I'll go get
it
that
looks
money
okay,
box.
I think, if we just turn it around. There's just, it's hard to. No. Right, try that. That's okay. As long as we're going to this much trouble, we might as well go to a little more, to get what you want.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
that
pretty
looks
good.
neat.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
I'll go
now
check
go
it
see
now.
if it came in. Yeah, if we got it.
Wondering if he knows how to set it. Tell him.
It's on the,
So we're all set?
we all set.
Okay, it's July 23rd, 1995, and we're adding to Dad's autobiography. And Dad, what we want to do is we want to get an idea of some of the experiences you had when you were living on the ranch. So if you could tell us a little bit about living with Mama and Papa, and some of the things that you did, maybe chores or fun things that you did, or things you did with your brothers and sisters.
Well, we didn't live on the ranch very long after I was born. We did. I do remember having an old horse named Pumpkin, and they put 3, 4, 5 of us on him at one time, and I was on the back.
That must have been a big horse.
Well,
What kind of
course,
horse?
we were just kids.
What kind of horse was that?
Just a quarter horse. And I remember I slid off his rear end, and the old horse stepped on me. I still got a scar. I forgot what leg it's on. There it is, right there.
Oh, it's right there? Sure is.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's about all I remember about that range.
Okay.
And then from there we moved up around Cerro Blanca. And I think that's where I started the first grade. And then from there we moved up to Fabens. And then Clint.
We want to know about some of the fun activities you did when you were a child.
Some of your childhood.
Fun activities.
Did you go fishing or hunting?
Yeah, did a lot of fishing, a lot of hunting. And
Charlene told me about a specific incident where
You
I
went frog
believe
gigging.
you were gigging, right? With
oh
Clyde?
yeah, yeah.
So we want to hear about that. She said
Okay.
that was an interesting story.
Yeah, there was an old drain ditch back behind the house where irrigation water, after it was used and all, it ran into that old drain ditch. And the water was about, probably 2 feet deep. But there's about 3 feet underneath the water of old black mud. There's a lot of carp, buffalo fish in there. Clyde and I went down to what we called gigging the fish. We took a pitchfork, and you watch the fish swim, and you gig him with a pitchfork and throw him up over the bank. So we did that for a while. The water got so black muddy that you couldn't see anything. So we decided we were going to have to quit. And Clyde says, no. He says, we both stand perfectly still. And those fish will come up to the top of the water to get air because it's so muddy. And then you can see them when they come up the top, and then you can gig them. Okay. So I stood perfectly still. Pretty soon I saw this light-colored fish coming up towards the top. So I got my pitchfork ready, and he got up pretty close to the top, and I gigged it. Tried to throw it up over the bank. It was too heavy. I couldn't get it up there.
That's a big fish.
And I kept jerking and pulling, and I looked over. Was about to ask Clyde for some help. There, Clyde.
It's writhing in pain.
He was under the water in the mud, and I had his foot up in the air. He'd started to take a step after telling me, "Don't nobody move." And when something light comes up, you know it's a fish, so you gig it. Well, I gigged it, but it was.
It wasn't a fish.
Well, I guess he was a sucker, all right.
Oh,
Did you stick around and help him, or what'd you do?
I threw my pitchfork down and ran like heck.
Didn't want him to get you. Oh
Nope.
dear.
Yeah, 'cause I'd asked
So-
Dad, I said, we never heard about them fighting any of the He goes, oh yeah, we had our little arguments, and that's when he was telling me these stories.
That's funny.
Oh no, we was brothers. We didn't ever fight.
Oh, sure, right. I don't know where you grew up, let me tell you.
You do, he just told you.
Yeah, that isn't life as I know it.
No, it seemed like every time we get into trouble with one another, whoever was in the wrong got the worst end of it. So, there one day I asked Dad if I could use the Model A, the only car we had. And he says, son, nobody can use that car. It's got a leak in the radiator hose. It's got to be changed. And I said, well, if I change it, can I use it tonight? And he says, yeah. So we bought the radiator hose by a big long stick. You just cut off the measurement that you needed. So I was doing that. Of course, I wasn't much of a mechanic. Clyde was always a good mechanic. And he wanted to use the Ford that night. And I told him no, that Dad already told me I could use it if I got that hose changed. So he kept doing things to interrupt me.
Oh, so you couldn't get it changed.
Yeah.
That's
way
the
he-
oldest and the youngest.
That way he could change it in a few minutes himself. So I told him to get away and leave me alone. He didn't do it. He'd keep on, interrupting me. And finally I told him, I said, Clyde, if you don't get away from here, I'm going to hit you with something.
Is there anything me?
Well, he didn't.
I can't go. Is there anything being taped on the tape recorders?
So he didn't quit. I reached over, had that big long tube of water hose. About, 2 inches round, I guess. About 3.5 feet long.
Oh, big.
So you
Yeah,
just,
like that over there laying.
you just cut off what you want of it to put in there. So I picked that up, swung it at him, hit him right across the side of the head, and he dropped like a poleaxe steer. He was out cold. I took off again.
I would. So did you take the car out that night?
Yeah,
I
he
took
said
the
he
car
took
that
off
night.
then.
Oh, well, he said he took off, but I thought he took off running.
I did. I
Oh.
took off running.
Yeah. So I was wondering, did you ever
But
hit
after he woke up and got out of the way, then I went ahead and fixed the radio hose and took the car that night.
Did he do anything to you for hitting it?
No?
Because he thought he knew he was wrong?
Yeah, I guess. Of course, he's 2 years older than I am. He was larger than I am.
I'm surprised he didn't
But-
pay you back.
Oh, he does.
No.
At different times.
Oh yeah, at different times.
Hey, another story that Charlene said that you had told her about was a sheep story.
Sheep.
How old were you when you had your little sheep?
Okay. Yeah, Dad bought a bunch of sheep.
And how old were you then?
Probably 8, 9 years old. I don't know. Just a kid, anyway. And we herded them between the irrigation ditch and the old drain ditch we was talking about. And in between there was, I don't know, 25, 30 yards, maybe more. And of course there was grass in between there, so we didn't have much herding to do. It just keep them from going too far one way because they wouldn't go in either one of the ditches. They don't like to swim. So that was our job. When we get in from school, we'd take the sheep out and herd them till they could eat. Till about dark, bring them back in, pin them up. We had, we got 2 little puppies. Old ewe had lost her lambs. Most of them had 2 lambs apiece. This old ewe had lost both of them. So Clyde and I decided we were going to raise those two puppies on that old ewe. She had milk. So we'd grab her and hold puppies up to her and let them nurse. Of course, she would stomp around for a while. She finally got used to it. And those puppies would wait at the gate, one on either side. And all those sheep pile in as soon as that one ewe come in. Well, they'd grab her from each side, and her old hips would just go up and down when they was nursing. Anyway, they gave us, I believe it was 5 of our own. And Freckles and Martha, and I can't remember the other names. And anyway, we herd them up there, and they got away from, we got to playing. They got away from us. We wasn't paying any attention to them. They went out, got into a wet alfalfa field. And they ate that alfalfa, green alfalfa, bloated. And they just swell up like...
So they're not supposed to eat that? Oh, I didn't know.
Not much of it at the time. But like I say, we got to playing and wasn't paying any attention, and they were having a heyday out there in that hayfield. And anyway, we rounded them up and started them for home. And they'd come along one and say, blat, and jump up in the air and flop over dead as a doornail. And they was all doing that, a lot of them. And then Freckles, one of ours, she started bellering and so forth like the others had, you know, and oh God, don't let my Freckles die. I'll never do anything bad again. Well, we were lucky. None of our 5 died.
Oh, wow. And why do you suppose? They were all out there at the same length of
Yeah.
time eating wet alfalfa.
Yeah,
I'll be darned.
wet green alfalfa.
Huh.
None of our 5 died. A lot of the others did. A lot of them didn't, but I don't know. I think we had about 150 head of them.
Wow. Can you train sheep? Are they very smart?
Trained sheep?
Are sheep very smart?
I think they're the dumbest animal that ever was.
Dumb as a box of rocks, huh? As that lady said yesterday. Because I know you said that cows were dumb. I didn't know if sheep were also.
Yeah, that's why they take a goat to lead all the sheep.
Oh.
You have a whole herd of sheep and they'll follow one goat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Sure.
Huh.
But, and we did a lot of hunting, we did a lot of fishing. In fact, I think I got there one time as fishing right there when I was living at Babin's at the head gates. And Dad worked for reclamation at that time. Controlled the amount of water that let out of the Rio Grande River into the Franklin Canal that went down for the farmers to irrigate with. So it depended on how many people needed water and how much as to how much water they'd take out of the Rio Grande and put in there for them to irrigate with. And we fished there in the river, right below the head gates. And Clyde and I, we nearly always fished by just putting up, we had old cane poles all we had, and we'd throw them out in the middle of the river. Of course, it's slow running, you know, and the old poles just float around out there. If you get a bite, well, it'd pull the end of it down, we'd swim out and get it. Anyway, we was fishing, and Dad stepped out and says, "You boys come on," says, "dinner's ready." Well, Dad only spoke one time. You either did it or you got your rear end tore up. Because he had a belt and a razor strap. And he wasn't afraid to use it. So he says, "You boys come on, dinner's ready." about that time I got a bite. So I got a hold of my old pole. I'd pull, and the old pole would bend, and the end of it would go clear down in the water. It was taking me out into the river. The fish would pull, and I'd pull. He was winning. So I hollered for a little help. And I don't remember if it was Clyde or OJ. One of them was there. And they came out and grabbed a hold of the pole with me, and we pulling on that. Of course, we used like window sash cord, you know, catch them old catfish. There's an old man named Nichols. He was an engineer for the railroad. He lived in El Paso, and they came down on the weekends and fished. And of course, he had all the fancy equipment, you know, the rods and reels and nets and all this kind of stuff that these highfalutin people use to fish with. And anyway, he came running over there. He saw that, you know, it was actually a fish. And we finally pulled his head up to the top of the water. The old head was about that wide.
Oh my.
And so then all the people that was lined up and down, colored people and all, you know, they'd come and fish, and you catch them old carp or eels or anything, and white people didn't eat them, but then colored people loved them, so we, you know, give them to them. And anyway, they all came running over there. Even Dad saw what was happening. So he went to the barn and he brought a hay hook, big old metal hay hook that you use to bale hay, you know. And anyway, we finally got that old fish out. Of course, old Nichols, his net wasn't anywhere near big enough to catch that fish. And we had a cotton wagon there. People picking cotton. And then they'd weigh their sacks. They had an old scale up there. They'd weigh their cotton before they dumped it on the wagon. So we finally got that fish out. Hooked him up on the scale. And I stood alongside him. And he was taller than I was, and he weighed 89 pounds.
Wow, it was huge. What kind of fish was it? A catfish?
No.
I didn't think catfish got that big.
That was of course, this is Texas.
Of course, a Texas catfish. I should have known. He probably had on spurs, right?
Yeah, you should have known.
Rode his little horse in.
But yeah, he weighed 89 pounds.
My goodness.
And
I take it you had fish for a long time.
no,
No, you haven't heard the rest of this story.
I'm sorry.
The old man Nichols, that engineer, was down there fishing every weekend, you know. Or sometime he'd catch fish. But he'd never caught one like that. And he says, "What are you going to do with that fish, son?" And I said, "I don't know." I looked at my dad. So you want to sell him? I looked at my dad, and he nodded his head. Yeah, I said, "Yeah, I'll sell him." He says, "You take $5 for him?" Dad was saying, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I'll take $5 for him." Okay, so he bought him. Next morning in the paper, had a picture of Nichols and that 89-pound catfish that he caught.
But you had your $5, right?
But I had my $5.
Oh, that's great.
Dad said, "Oh, he wouldn't be fit to eat anyway." Big old tough.
Did you get in trouble for not coming to dinner?
Oh, he busted my butt. Even after seeing what it was, you know. Doesn't make any difference. I
Oh.
told you to come to dinner.
Oh, so
And he
you...
busted my butt for the board.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, you learn to mind.
Dad? You are?
Yeah. That's all.
Okay. Okay, I was going to ask you a little bit about when you were going to school. Did you have any favorite subjects? What, did you play sports? Did you enter into science contests? I don't even know if they did that then. They do that now. Tell us a little bit about school?
What kind of?
We have science contests that the kids enter into now.
No, we didn't.
Or spelling bees or math. Okay. All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about school and any jobs that you had while you were in school?
Well, I went to Clint High School, and well, it was a big school.
How many kids?
We had all the grades in one building.
Oh wow. How many kids went to school there? Do you know? About.
He knows how many were in his graduating class.
I don't know how many went, but we had to play 6-man football instead of 11 because we didn't have 11 guys in school.
Oh, okay.
So we played 6-man football.
Did you play against other schools?
Oh yeah. And played basketball.
And what position did you play? In basketball?
Guard.
Guard.
And we went to state one year.
So you're a pretty good basketball team then.
We had a good basketball team. It only took 5 men.
Yeah. and you only had 6, so come on. Were you one of the taller guys on the basketball team at that time?
No.
No. There were people taller than you.
Right.
And were you very tall when you played basketball? Were you
No.
about no.
No, I wasn't.
How tall were you about?
Probably 5'6", 5'8".
Oh. Because I know you're what, 5'11", so I thought maybe you were
Yeah.
pretty tall.
And well, we had, like I say, we had a big school there. In my graduating class, there were 3 people in it.
3 people in the graduating class?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's what I asked
The lens is going that way.
Michelle at her graduation. I think there she had like 500 and something.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, well, now, we're going to see how smart you are, what kind of memory you have. Because I said, I graduated in 1941. Now, that's been how many years ago? She told me. I said, all right, now in that many years, I want to ask you to name all the ones in your graduating class. Because I can tell you all the names in my graduating